with a particular purpose in mind. So as Nadia said, today, the title of the workshop is Balancing Emotions with Chinese Philosophy. So, so maybe I can spend a couple minutes to parse out each of those words. So to act as kind of an overarching framework that we can actually refer back to these concepts, these principles as we go along. So balance, of course, everyone has a conception of it, but I guess what I want to point out in my particular way of understanding it is that balance is not the same as sameness or like, you know, like level. You can call that static balance, okay, you know, where there's a kind of a equality or a sameness, which is part of life. But I would say if you're really paying attention, more often than not, it's a dynamic balance. So there's a shift, right? It's not like just set like this. There's a bit of up and down. So in terms of balance, I'm thinking more in terms of dynamic balance, a change of flow. And I'm also thinking about diversity and uniqueness, right? For instance, I know there's a whole range, there's a whole gender theory, and that's kind of been the conversation now about even, you know, transgender, et cetera. But just to make it a bit simple, right? We think about, you know, male and female, you know, the genitals are different, right? But there's a beautiful balance, right? If you want to create a new life, right? So it's not equal, it's complementary, right? But there's a diversity, and it's a beautiful diversity if we can coordinate it well. So that relates, I say that because balance to me, in terms of emotions, is not where you're dull, right? All the emotions are kind of even keel 24/7, right? That's kind of like robotic, right? As we know, emotions make us human. In fact, emotions are, I would say, you know, a type of intelligence, right? And some say 7 intelligences or 3 intelligences. For now, let's just say it's 1/3, because you have your mental, right? Your intellectual intelligence, you have your physical intelligence, which I call your instinctive intelligence. And then you have your emotional intelligence, which is kind of your heart, intuitive intelligence. And when I teach kind of the broader curriculum or system that I offer, I kind of break down each one further. But today, because of time and focus, we'll focus on the emotional intelligence. So I want to acknowledge emotions as one of the most powerful, in a way, user interfaces between human and external world, right? So it's a dynamic thing, like I referred to with balance. And I would say that a kind of emotional intelligence, more mature, is where we allow the diversity of emotions to exist in our space, right? And I know in terms of psychology, there's a little bit of noise. Sometimes they talk about positive or negative psychology. Can everyone still hear me? Are we still good? Okay. So I sometimes avoid the word positive and negative because of the connotations of positive as good, and therefore good emotions, and negative as bad, as negative emotions. But if I do use those terms, I think of it a little bit more in terms of neutral value, okay? Positive could be, let's say, more constructive or more charging us, right? And negative in the sense of perhaps more draining us, right? More like an output of energy. So we can think it about in those terms, but I really don't mean to say, for instance, you know, anger good, you know, anger bad and happy, anger bad and happy good. Okay, I'll go a little bit more into more nuance about that when we kind of go into more kind of frameworks and maps about that. So one more layer besides emotion as a dynamic diversity of different, right, states. I will also like to use the word itself, you know, broken down with the word motion. Most of the word emotion is motion, right? So again, that's a reminder that it's a motion of what? The E can stand for energy, right? And this I can connect into Chinese philosophy, of which Chinese medicine is a application or derivative. When we think about energy, like what is a Chinese philosophical concept that relates to that? And some of you may have heard of the word qi, right? Or ki in Japanese, or like in the Middle East, in Hebrew, they call it ruach, right? Prana in the South Asia, or pneuma in Greek, right? So it's an idea of energy. But if I talk about qi in particular, because that's a framework that we're using today, so qi relates to energy, emotion, and breath. All those are tied together. So later on, we'll do some work around that about integrating that. So again, no emotion is good or bad, but I would say healthy emotion is in a state of motion, flow, right? A dynamic. Once it gets too static, right, stuck, you can say, okay, you're not spending that energy. It's in a potential energy state. It's okay. But sometimes that's called repression or numbing out, or you're not in a balance trajectory of emotion. So there's the so-called Bible of Chinese medicine written by, it's called the August, honorable emperor of Chinese medicine. And in this text, it has a whole chapter, or even more in terms of referring to the idea that emotions are energy in different trajectories. You can call it physiological energy, right? That manifests as a certain emotional state, right? So emotion, again, energy and emotion, right? Healthy emotion moves in a balance, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes inward, sometimes outward. That's normal. That's healthy, right? And then also in terms of it's a dynamic balance between all these. So that's balance, that's emotion, and then I don't have to talk about with. It's just a preposition. But Chinese philosophy, and I would like to say when I mention Chinese, I don't mean for instance, there's a lot of negative, maybe kind of news or connotation to Chinese right now. I'm not talking about modern China or the kind of the politics around that, right? That's a whole nother discussion. I'm talking about ancient China. I'm talking about the culture, right? And I would say so. I just thought of it in Chinese, right? The word for culture is 文化. In English, I would translate 文 as pattern or grain, like you see in my carpet here, or you see in your fingerprint, right? That's a 文. Or you see in the sky, the clouds, or you see in the wood, right? In wood grain, you see that? That's the 文. Okay, very interesting, right? And hua actually means transform, transformation. So there's an idea of culture being kind of a operating system, if you will, of humanity, right? And it changes, right? So again, that word change. So Chinese culture, one of the root philosophies, getting to the last word, is change. Again, not so much stasis or state or matter, which perhaps is more of a Western scientific conception, right? To think about material, matter, cutting that matter, chopping it to smaller and smaller pieces until you get like atoms and subatomic particles and quarks, right? Whereas Chinese philosophy or culture is more about dynamic or flow or waves, right? So even in modern physics, there's this kind of wave and particle duality. So Western medicine or science is more, at least there's it's not either or, but more on the particle, the matter, the seeable, the measurable. And Chinese philosophy, Chinese culture, Chinese medicine emphasizes more the space between things, right? The silence, between the sounds, right? The darkness, between the lights, so to speak, and this kind of transitional kind of philosophy or culture. It's in the word 文化, right? Actually, the word culture is interesting, right? You cultivate, right? And you culture like a bacterial culture or fermentation. That's also very interesting, right? Even in the English word culture. So I love words, I love language. So so in terms of, again, Chinese, it is talking about, especially, ancient China, about 2,000 years ago, there was a time, much like now, right? There was a lot of conflict between different states, different political ideologies, etc., and constant warfare, right? So it's very interesting. Often in these chaotic times, the people who care, right, and have some level of systems thinking, insight, they're like, okay, there's this problem, but let's try to find solutions. So in a way, these chaotic times, right, you're seeking order, right, and you're trying out different hypotheses. So there was the 诸子百家, so-called dozens or hundreds of schools of thought that were trying to figure out a way to resolve this kind of conflict. Yeah. So I won't go too much into the history of Chinese philosophy or particular philosophers in particular, but I just want to paint that picture because we're drawing from this cultural historical context. Some models, some maps, some tools. I would say, wisdom, which is the ability to make sense, right? Someone without wisdom, they don't have common sense, or they're not able to figure out things, right? So their life is not so meaningful. So I would say a wise person is able to extract meaning from even situations where people say, I don't see anything meaningful, right? But they're able to fertilize that, right? So so that leads me to philosophy, right? Which I spoke a little bit about in the podcast we did. One of my favorite words, philo and Sophia, right? Sophia is wisdom, as we said, being able to make sense, increased meaning of your life, right? That very simple definition. Who doesn't want that, right? Ultimately, if your life is meaningless, right, people start to go in the downward spiral, even towards suicide, right? So I think meaning is the greatest currency of our life. How you invest that, how you produce that is very individual. The philo part is related to the Greek word philia, right? And we know from Greek that there's like 5, 6, 7 different conceptions of love, right? In English, sometimes limited, So it's good to be bilingual, trilingual, right? You have different ways to think about the same human experience. So, for instance, there's agape, right, which is divine, love, or the love that God has for us, unconditional love. There's eros, which is like romantic or intimate love, right, between lovers. And then there's philos, which is actually very interesting. It's like a fraternal, right, like sibling, like love between equals. So that's very interesting. That kind of love, right? Not like a worshiping love. Oh my God, I worship wisdom up there somewhere, so abstract, right? It is like befriending wisdom, right? Hey, what's up, wisdom? Let's hang out. Talk to me. What do you think about this? And so it's this kind of collegial discussion about ideas, principles, and practices around wisdom. So, and that's the kind of perhaps tone I want to set for this workshop today. Like anytime, I don't have to be like this guru authority. I actually appreciate the opportunity for all of you to come together, because every time I share something, we can call it teaching or whatever, but I am also taught, and I also learn so much, just by playing off these ideas with your beautiful, unique consciousnesses here. So anytime, I think there's a way to like chat or something like that, or I don't know, right? Or Nadia can help me with that. If there's any questions, you can raise your hand, and maybe I'll pause at some point, and we can have a little discussion. After I finish a thought, then I'll maybe check the questions. So we have the title, Balancing, right? Okay, now you're thinking, okay, he talked about dynamic, emotions, right? There's energy and motion, different trajectories, up, down, expanding, contracting, centering. Chinese, right? Ancient Chinese thought during a time much like ours, where it lasted for actually a couple hundred years. Okay, so we just had this chaos more or less, maybe the last couple of years, right? So, and there have been many kind of cultures and civilizations that rose and fell, and each one lasted approximately 200, 300 years. So at least here in the US, that's about our time frame. So hopefully we can make it through this transition time using some of this love of wisdom, right, or befriending wisdom. So a simple model that I use with my clients, and I know some of you are healthcare practitioners, or maybe you're a teacher or you're a parent, but even for yourself, one simple way that you can think about, I'm going to throw out the word stress now, right? So I don't have to define that. Well, you can say there's good stress and bad stress, right? So that's actually called eustress, like Europe, EU, ROP, EUSTRESS, and then distress, right? So meaning, for instance, exercise, right, is a kind of good stress, etc., right? But like chronic, workplace stress where there's a lot of unresolved things, and that's kind of distress. So stress is not good or bad, it's a kind of stimulation. So everyone has a certain capacity, right? Think of a ball, right? And maybe it's a capacity of 10. Some people more, some people can handle 20, some people can only handle 5. So that's individual, depending on personality or your resilience or, again, your wisdom, right? I would say wisdom can expand your capacity to handle so-called stressors. Okay, so as the stressee, you're not so stressed out by stress, and that has to do with meaning again. Okay, so what I tell clients, if I'm a little bit more ambitious, I said on the input side. So think of an arrow coming in as the stress input, the stressor. Can you list out 10 things that are sources of emotional stress, right? Okay, well, that's easy. Yeah. My partner, right? 24/7. That drives me crazy, right? My boss, okay, number 2, yeah. My coworkers, number 3. My kids, oh my God, my pets, right? All these things. Yeah, I'm sure pretty easy. Boom, 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 boom. Fill out 10, right? My health, politicians, or my financial situation. It's so easy. I just threw out a bunch, right? So that's on the input side, stressors. And then I say, okay, can you rank them in terms of greatest to lowest stress? Okay, maybe like number 9, number 10 is like, oh yeah, I've been struggling to learn Portuguese or something like that, right? So that's kind of low on the list, right? Or like number 10 is like, yeah, I'm a bit stressed out about my garage. I want to clean it up, but I just haven't got time for it. Those are maybe not huge contributors. So I would say, especially if they're having health issues, or let's call it emotional wellness issues, right? That's our topic for today. Then I would say your homework is to knock off this week one thing from your list, next week second thing, right? So eventually I said, at least during our treatment phase, our intensive treatment phase, I want you to knock off like 3 or maybe 5 things. Just temporarily put aside learning Portuguese. That's not the most meaningful right now, right? Okay, that's your homework, right? I can't do that for you. That's why this is called self-care, right? It's not healthcare or sick care. It is self-care, and no one can do this but yourself, right? On the other side, there's the arrow going out, which is stress output, right? So what relieve your emotions, put them into that dynamic flow? Oh, 10 things. Can you list it out? And they're like, well, I used to do yoga, but then I stopped, right? Well, you can't put that on the list, right? I used to, right, exercise. I used to hang out with my friends. I used to blah, blah, blah. And so they often struggle to fill out that 10 things in the output side. And I say, okay, well, so you have nothing? Okay, fine. You can think back to, if you're not doing it now, add things that de-stress you. Okay, well, yeah, I used to put yoga, so put yoga up there. Meditation on there. Walking, hiking on there. What else? Oh yeah, I used to like to just sketch and draw on there. Oh, you know what? I remember I had a lot of fun. It made me feel so happy when I did karaoke, right? Put that on there. For me, that would be like top of the list. And then so on and so forth, right? And I said, okay, so let's say this list, right, which you struggled to fill out, right, which are the de-stressing factors, I want you to increase. I want you to add in 1 this week and then another this week. And you don't have to use all of them, but it's good to have a little list. So, that you have explicitly written down those things that or maybe new ones that you can try. I heard that, this kind of flotation tanks are good, right? Or you're floating in the salt water and you're, in the darkness. Okay, I'm going to put that. I want to try that, right? Because I heard it was good. So, and then invest, okay, as much energy and time, or, try to balance that out on the output side than the input side. Again, I can't touch the input or output side. Maybe if you're like, for instance, an acupuncturist, you can help to output stress, right? You can take out 20, 30, 40, 50% of their stress, at least when they come in. But of course, they have to show up, right? So it's kind of a little list of contract commitment to what, I want them to see explicitly that are stressors and de-stressors, yeah? And now in terms of that capacity, that's a third variable, right? Input, output, but it's that thing that I first talked about, that ball, right? So my contention is through cultivation, through practical or applied philosophy, that you can actually increase that capacity. You can create more space, such that before, trying to do 2 things a day already was too much, right? But maybe later on with your practice, you can handle 5 things. So I would say that has to do with, now I'm gonna lead you down another model, right? So you see this input output model, right? And it is now, perhaps you can think of a seesaw, okay? And where on one side is stressful state, right? Which is often weighing us down, stressful state. And I'm going to use the word, again, I used before, the currency, the most valuable currency, not the euro, yeah, not the dollar, not the yen, right? To me, it's meaning, right? Because without meaning, like none of that helps. None of that so-called money helps, right? So stressful is a low meaning state, right? Let's take Portuguese, right? That was on the stressor side. So Portuguese, right? If you just did it for fun, like, okay, I just want to learn Portuguese, there's no real reason, then yeah, take it off the list. It's not that meaningful because it's adding more stress trying to learn all this Portuguese vocabulary and grammar, right? But if you met a Portuguese hottie, right? And it's getting serious and he or she wants to take you to meet their parents who can only speak Portuguese, right? Then suddenly, oh, learning Portuguese is actually still stressful, right? Oh, to learn a new language, but it's very meaningful. And so you may not want to take that out because, you know, that family gathering is in 1 month, right? So maybe you want to keep the Portuguese. So my point is that, again, it's not, it's a little bit arbitrary or it's relative, right? So something begins to feel stressful when it's kind of meaningless. So there's a correlation between stressful and meaninglessness or low meaning. On the other hand, what is high meaning, right? So high meaning, I like alliteration. I like kind of rhyming, again, playing with words. So if stressful is low meaning, then I would say spiritual, okay, is a high meaning state, right? And so when I say spiritual, I don't mean anything like necessarily religion related, you know, like people say I'm spiritual, not religious, whatever, right? It has nothing to do with incense, you know, burning or mudras or mantras or temple or mosque or church. To me, it is optimization of your mental, emotional, and physical state, right? And we're focusing on emotions today. Individual alignment, right? It's like these three characters. Mind is strong, you know, emotions are balanced, right? And then body is healthy, right? And then the alignment, right? So if you can get those three kind of circles, right? Mental, emotional, physical, optimize, polish them, right? These jewels, these intelligences, right? Upgrade the IQ, EQ, and PQ, physical quotient, intellectual quotient, emotional quotient, okay? And then make them align so they're on the same team, not working against each other, right? That would be like a football or soccer team where there's many different very good players, right? Superstars, but they're not playing towards the same goal, right? One is shooting the opposite way. I'm like, what are you doing, right? So alignment of optimized mental, emotional, physical state to me is spiritual. That axis, right, of alignment where you are mentally, emotionally, and physically present, that is spiritual. And that can be at any moment. That can be when you're sitting in a subway, right? Even if it kind of smells, right? Or when you're talking to your partner, or you're trying to, you know, play with your children or whatever, right? You can try to align yourself, right? And since our focus is emotion, that's what we'll you know, emphasize on. So, and I want to acknowledge that, again, reiterate that no emotion is good or bad, but I will say that emotions may be the actual most powerful factor to affect our mind and our behaviors, okay, our mental and physical state, right? Huge, right? You think about what's going on now. You look at the news, right? All these crazy emotions, powerful emotions. And as I said in my little 6.5-minute commercial yesterday I posted, I would say emotions are like wet paint, okay? Or like clay, wet clay. So they're still moldable, okay? That's why we're working at the emotion level. Once the clay starts to dry, right, I would call that emotion becoming beliefs, right? Uh-oh, you're starting to harden, right? Harder to reform. Maybe a little bit, but it'll crack, right? And if you put the clay in the kiln to fire it and glaze it, that's like a conviction. That's like you're stuck, right? It's really hard to change a person's conviction, right? Let alone belief, right? Emotions, okay, there's a chance there. Like energy is in motion. It's still at an energy state, not a matter state. Okay, let's think of it like that. So, so much respect to emotions. It's 1/3 of our operating system, user interface for life, and in a way, it's the most powerful. So let me go a little bit further. Okay, so you have this idea of stress input, output, emotional stress in this case. You have this idea of stressful and spiritual on a seesaw, related to where you put more meaning, right? Hopefully that's clear. You can unmute yourself at any time and say, hey, what was that again? Or if you can't hear me, there's any technical problems, feel free to speak up, because I'm not really getting much feedback, so it's kind of a monologue. I see Nadia's face there, so. So next, let's go into, I think we can expand this into more maps. So far I gave you the input-output map or image. I gave you the seesaw image. Another way I can give you is, let's say a wave, right? Earlier I talked about 文化, right? Or culture as a changing thing and like an operating system for humanity, right? And I believe that we need a new operating system because, the way things have been going, is kind of a one-way street, right? In terms of how we're using resources, right? It's a linear thing. It's a dead end, right? We need to find a way, again, to have a more circular model, right? Where we're not just taking from the earth and producing trash, right? So anyways, so in terms of a wave, let's think of a horizontal line, right? And let's think of a wave. Some call it a sine wave, right? Which starts at the line, rises up, right? And then starts to go back, touches the line and comes back below and then rises up, right? You see this kind of wave shape, right? So let's think of something. Since the fall equinox just happened, right? A week or so ago, right? So that would be what? When, okay, below the line is dark, okay? Or yin, right? To throw out a term, dark, let's just say. Above the line is light, okay? And let's just think in terms of exposure to the sun, right? What's the equinox? Where actually there's an equal dark and night, right? Equal solar exposure, about 12 hours each in the 24-hour period. So that point, right? That first point on the line is, let's call that spring equinox, okay? Fall equinox is later on. So why spring equinox? It's at the line where it's equal, but it's rising, right? It's becoming more light, okay? Until what? Light, the days get longer, light. And then what? Summer solstice is the longest, lightest day of the year. And then what? Oh, you reach the maximum. Oh shit, right? Things are getting darker now, right? And then you hit the line again. What is that line? That is also where you reach equal. That is what just passed the fall or autumn equinox, right? Equal day and night, but it's descending into darkness. Days get shorter, darker until you hit the darkest night, right? December 21st often, right? Which is called winter solstice, right? And the sun stays level in the sky. And then 3 days later at Christmas Eve, the sun arises again, right? Not to get too much into mythology and these stories, but it's natural, right? This is something that our ancestors all knew, right? So let's take that model, and what I want to do is then I want to take that wave. Hopefully that is helpful. Let's make it into a circle. So a wave is like this, right? There's like a U shape, and then there's like a upside down U shape, right? What we can do is we can make it into a circle, right? Or you can think of it like that, right? Make it a wave into a circle. So wave to me is just a circle that's been cut and then rotated, okay? So let's think about a circle. So that's the fourth map I'm giving you, right? I gave you the input-output map. I gave you a seesaw map. I gave you this wave map. Now I'm giving this circle, cycles. Let's talk about cycles, right? This is one of the most simple, but one of the most substantial and profound things in terms of Chinese philosophy. And again, I'm actually I'm a practitioner of Chinese philosophy per se, but I'm also, like I said in the podcast, I consider myself a perennial philosopher. I love all the different symbols and forms and ceremonies and rituals. And to me, those are the exoteric, right? Those are the things at the bottom of the mountain, all these different diversities, 360 degrees, Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet of light, right? When all those light appear, all those colors appear at the same time, you see white light. It's amazing, right? So I think this, I know that this cycle thing is not unique to Chinese philosophy, but I'll give you our way of thinking about it. So we have the circle, right? And let's think about a day cycle, okay? day cycle of the circle. What is the point? Okay, and I was so grateful. That's why I'm a little bit jazzed today, right? It's not the coffee. I'm also very passionate about this topic. I was able to see the sunrise today, right? I took off my contact lenses, and then I have solar absorption, right? So that's the rising, right? Horizon, right? Right? Just like that wave model, right? You're going from darkness to light, right? That circle of the sun, book, right? Passes over, comes up, that's sunrise, right? Rising energy. And then what? Ooh, right? You reach noon, which is, wow, the solar radiation is the strongest in all directions, right? And then what? Afternoon comes, right? From midday, afternoon. And then you have sunset, also very beautiful, right? Where that circle of the sun comes down, right? Sinking, rising, expanding, sinking, and then sunk, right? Or at the bottom where the sun is on the other side of the planet, right? And so that's the day cycle, right? If you want, since we talked about it, you can imagine sitting in the middle, right? Facing south, or where the solar noon is, right? The midday. And on the left, right? East, therefore, is the sunrise. And on the right, okay, therefore is the sunset. So you can even put yourself into this model, right? You embody it. And then behind you, right, is the north, right? That's why for real estate, it's good to have, especially if you want to grow a garden, south side facing, right? Because you have maximum exposure of the sunrise and sunset, okay? Now that's getting into feng shui or real estate. So let's go further. What about the month, right? The word month, moonth, has a cycle related to the moon, right? The 28, 30 days or so. What is that? What is when the moon is starting to grow? It is the waxing, right? When it goes from, when that crescent starts to grow, right? That's called waxing. And then when it reaches the brightest, that's the full moon. When the moon starts to wane, it's called a waning moon. That crescent becomes like a banana shape, right? Then that's called, that's decreasing, that's called the waning moon. And then you reach the bottom, the darkest is the new moon, right? So every month it happens, these cycles. One more in terms of time, we have the seasons, obviously. What is the rising season? It is springtime. What is the hottest, right, most flourishing season? Summer. Then it gets cooler, temperature is falling into the fall, right? And then we have winter, where everything kind of dies, right? So day, month, year, we have this cycle. This philosophy comes from the observation of nature, which you can say is cosmology. And so, I'm trying to write some book or something like that, but it's a struggle for me because I have so many ideas. But one idea to think about it is, I would say, nurture your nature. That is, you see nature out there, wow, what a good example for us, right? Right? And then you try to connect it to your human nature, right? And you nurture it, right? In biology, you talk about genetics or epigenetics, right? That is nature or nurture, respectively. There's no way to tease it out. It's both, right? Epigenetics act on genetics, right? You can't have one without the other. So that's why I say nurture your nature, right? So this is a very cosmological model, right? Day, obviously, moon, you see it. The seasons, you see it. Same thing for us. But before we get to Homo sapiens, we can talk about a plant, right? What is the springtime of a plant? Literally when it sprouts, spring, sprout, right? The plant sprouts. And then what? It flowers, right? Flourishing, flower, right? In the summer, right? And then let's say, roughly different plants have different cycles, but this is symbolic. Then you have the fruit, the fruition, the harvest during the fall, right? And then what happens? The fruit falls if you don't eat it, or you eat it and you poop it out. What is it? You have the seed, goes into the ground in winter and lies dormant, right? Until the next spring. Wow, even plants have it, okay? Flowering plants, right? Finally, let's talk about Homo sapiens. So what do we have, right? What is spring of our life? Birth, right? Wow, beautiful. Wow, right? So much energy growing, right? The baby. And then, so that's like birth and childhood, right? And then you get to adulthood, wow, the prime of your life, right? You're such a badass, right? Everyone knows you, you're famous, whatever, right? All this expansive energy, right? You're motivated, you have all these projects and bucket lists, all these things you want to do. And then, right, that's adulthood. And then you get to elderhood, right? Where you're kind of harvesting, right? And you're kind of declining, right? Hopefully slowly, right? In the fall, maybe you fall down, right? The fall of your life, elderhood, right? And then, what's afterward? Death and the afterlife, right? So you're stuck in purgatory or the bardos, whatever, you know, for a while, right? Until you figure out where you want to be reborn, okay? If you believe that, right? So there's that cycle. And finally, okay, because I want to show you the universal application of this. This is not just philosophy. I think philosophy is just, you know, it's just abstract. It's not really useless. It becomes useful when you're able to apply it to, you know, as many levels as possible, right? Then that's a very profound or substantial philosophy. So what can it also apply to? And this is something we're going to use, is breath, right? Everyone likes to talk about that nowadays, call it breath work, right? Which is actually a literal translation of qi gong, right? Gong means work, right? Breath is qi, right? So, or pranayama, right? Yama is control, right? Of the prana, right? The vital breath, the vital energy. So what is the sprouting phase? It's kind of upside down. When I say rising, it's the diaphragm actually going down, right? But if you're standing on your head, the diaphragm is rising. But think of it like this: you're filling your lungs. Wow, activating. That is this phase, like the spring phase. Let's say that, right? And then you fill your lungs max. Hold it. That's summer, right? And then you can't hold it forever, right? You can't have forever summer. You have to let it go, let go, right? And that is fall, right? And so you're exhaling, you're expiring, right? Let things expire. Don't hold on to it forever, right? Youth forever. So we use all these creams and stuff, right? So, you know, aging and death are part of the system. We can't avoid it. It's universal. And then what, right? All the air is out, just like when we die, right? First act, birth. Last act. Bye, guys, right? Hopefully rest in peace. Hibernation, dormancy, right? Sinking down, right? In winter, waiting, patience, resilience, right? I threw in some virtues there, or some could be related to emotions now. Okay, so I just want you to hopefully you can think about it in broader terms. This so-called philosophy, but now we're gonna more specifically go into emotions now. Okay, since I've been talking for about 40 minutes now. I'm going to pause for 10 seconds. Anyone have any questions? Okay, I don't see the chat thing, but okay. So again, feel free if you guys want to chime in or not. Otherwise, I'm going to keep talking. So next thing I want to map onto this, think of a cross, right? Think of a cross now. With in the middle, right, there's a center. At the 4 points, we have everything we just talked about, right? South, north, east, west, sunrise, sunset, you know, midday, midnight, etc. Right? Now let's map on particular emotions. Let's actually, before we do that, so we can talk about, you know, this rising being sunrise, being a waxing moon, being spring, being the in-breath inspiration, being birth or childhood, right? Being the sprout. Okay, that's a lot of words, right? So in Chinese philosophy, we chose a symbol, and a natural symbol, right? Because we're natural philosophers. What is a symbol in nature that is most like that energy? And so they chose wood, right? Makes sense. Wood is like kind of penetrating, right? Up and down, right? It's kind of extending, it's growing, right? So we chose the word mu, or wood, right? And so just someone else chimed in. So what about the most flourishing time? What's a good natural symbol for that? Or you think sun? We talked about sun, right? So, but in terms of an element, right? We call it fire, right? So that makes sense. Expansive, right? I already threw in these adjectives earlier, right? Rising, right? Wood, and then I said expansive. Now you can think about it as fire, right? And then what about something that is sinking down? and you can even add temperature, right? Uh, uh, Heat, maximum heat, and then it's cooling off and it's sinking, right? And so I think, that's like metal. When you touch it, it's usually cool, right? And when you put it in water, or it's heavy, right? Definitely heavier than water, so it sinks down. So let's choose metal. Maybe they had a whole argument. Let's vote, right? But they decided metal as the sinking, as the fall, right? It's an interesting image too, right? Metal is like you cut with, so you're like harvesting, right? The corn or whatever you're cutting, right? Letting go time, right? Cut things off, right? Relationships or beliefs, right? And on the wood side, in contrast, it's kind of controlling, holding on, right? If the wood doesn't hold on, it's going to fall over. It's not going to be able to grow. Right? You need the roots. So wood is a little bit control, right? Metal is a little bit cutting, right? Wood is a bit rising, metal is sinking, fire is expanding, warming, hot. What about water? Water always goes to the lowest point, right? And it's cooling and it has a depth to it. So as long as there is a gradient of height, right, it's always going to flow too. And so, if we add in ideas of like character and virtue, that would be like humility, right? Maybe wood is like pride, okay, confidence, etc. So we have now, okay, in the middle, I forgot, we have earth. Earth is a, you think of a mountain, right? Centered, balanced, or like I said earlier, mental, emotional, physical alignment. You can sit like a mountain, right? In the cave on top of the mountain, okay? So that is centeredness. It is like, in order to make a mountain, you had to gather things together, or two plates had to push up, right? So it is coming together, gathering, okay? So that's earth. And earth, in a way, carries or is related to all of the other four. Yeah. Some of you who have maybe studied Chinese philosophy in particular, maybe think of the five. You put the earth outside on the circle, so you have like a five, like a pentagram, right? For now, just think of it as a cross with earth in the center. Okay. So we have a pivot point. We have a center point we can return to whenever we're lost. Okay. And those of you who have done the self-care cultivation system that I put together called 道德功法, this is 功法number 1, where you're all over the place, up, down, upside down, left, right, running back and forth in your life, in your thoughts, right? And come home, right? That's the first practice that we do in our formal cultivation. So now, okay, as I said before, we'll move into the emotions. And I mentioned earlier, I think, about psychology, and then there's kind of this newish field of positive psychology, which maybe it's just like 5-10 years old. I'm here in UC, in Berkeley, where there's one of the top public universities in the United States, if not in the world, University of California, Berkeley. And they're actually, they have many kind of progressive researchers. And one of the founders of, or at least early researchers of positive psychology is in UC Berkeley. I think it's called the Greater Good Center, right? And very interesting, there's even a center for psychedelic research or medicine that just started 2 weeks ago. So that's another very progressive thing. Anyways, we can leave that as an aside for now. But in terms of positive psychology, I thought, well, okay, that's a good idea, but in Chinese philosophy or medicine, there is already this conception of, again, yin and yang, right? The positive and negative. So the usual, in my experience, way of Western medicine is you have a problem, let's kill it. Let's shoot it down, let's burn it out, right? So it's like our military industrial complex applied to pharmaceuticals, right? Again, there's a place for it, but there's so many other options, and other worldviews. So there isn't really this idea of enhancing the good, the positive, right? Except, okay, supplements, right? But that's kind of a complementary alternative thing. Maybe, okay, more innovative doctors now, younger ones, the old ones died off. they'll recommend like vitamin D or whatever, right? But before it's just like, okay, take these 2 pills and then call you in a month or something like that, or let's just cut it out, right? So it's very disease oriented, right? In terms of physical, like whatever, cancer or tumors, this kind of thing. But also, I think in terms of psychotherapy, like mental emotional now, there is about talking about your feelings and kind of processing it, letting it out, and that's good. But the way I like to think about it, and this is where positive psychology is going, which I very much support, is that my way of thinking about it is, I'm going to use the word meditation, which for now is just intentional emotions. Okay, focusing your mind to a certain frequency. Okay, to tune your emotions to a certain energy state, which then affects your physiology. So let's just call that meditation as medication. Okay, so these aren't just words. Again, they are just words, but it's the import, the meaning behind it that is the key. That, you know, as if you take it seriously, right? Not like, oh, this is so serious, like, oh, like, but meaning you with intention, right? And even if it seems a little bit woo-woo, right, or cheesy to you, just try it, okay? And because there's a whole more recent scientific research behind what I'm sharing with you, as well as millennia, actually, of cultivation practices behind it. I just try to translate it in a way that's a bit more East-West science and spirituality, traditional and modern way. Hopefully, I see myself as a translator. So the wood, let's go back to that model, right? The wood, the rising, okay? What is that? Yeah, what is that psychophysiological energy of, like getting up like that? Well, we've seen a lot of it lately, right? Thousands, tens of thousands, millions collectively doing this, right? Right? They raise their fists, right, for social justice, right? There have been a lot of marches going on around what people feel is right, right? And that's wood energy. That's wood emotion, that motivation, that I care about something, and I'm going to get up and do something about it, right? I'm compelled. Is that good or bad? Okay, you can say that's more, again, I'm careful about positive and negative, but let's say that's a more activating, that's a more productive way of using wood energy, wood, which is emotion, right? If it's felt. But what happens when that rising energy persists beyond its relevance, its productive relevance? It's like expiring, but you're still holding on to it. It starts to ferment, right? So this kind of too much rising, physiologically is hypertension or hyperthyroid or like headache, right? So it can show up as too much, in Chinese medicine, we call it even liver qi or liver yang rising. So all of these actually associate with an organ, which we can talk about later. So the let's say the more destructive or more draining and long-term not so good label that we can use on wood rising energy is anger or fury or rage, such that as you're yelling and you lose your voice, right? Or you're so angry you punch the wall and break your hand or someone's face, right? So it becomes too violent and too aggressive, right? So every one of these energies, elemental or wood energy in this case, has a spectrum of, too much of a good thing. Rising is good, but too much or only rising, there's no downward to balance it. Okay, then you're getting to a pathological emotion state. So let's go to the fire, right? What is expansive like this, right? Is anxiety, okay, or agitation, right? Your energy is just dissipating. Like, oh my God, what should I do? You're kind of running all over the place like this, right? Expanding outwards. Is that good or bad? In that context, okay, maybe not so good. You drain yourself, right? Ooh, right? You fall down. But still in the fire phase, what is that expansive energy related to in a more good way? It is, I like to use the word awe. Some would say joy or celebration or excitement, that feeling. Wow, yeah. But my favorite mantra, right? This is a very ancient sacred mantra. I give it to you is wow. Wow, okay. So it's also expanding, right? From your narrow, right? Contracted to wow, right? You go to Iguazu Falls, right? In South America, Brazil, Argentina. And, that was my breath. This is crazy, amazing, right? So actually a few days ago, I did a talk at a conference online for Niagara University. And the title was The Tao of Wow, right? And the subtitle was cultivating awe as an antidote to anxiety, okay? So I'm already giving you these kind of prescriptions of meaningful syllables, right? Awe, okay? This kind of motivating energy to do something to help people for fire and wood respectively, in order to treat ourselves, right? These little pills, right, of meaning, to treat anxiety with awe and anger with generosity or loving kindness, right, for service. Let's do the other, right? Go a little bit faster. Let's see, time, we're getting a little bit close. We have 35 minutes left. And so metal, right? What is metal? Metal is sinking, metal is cutting. So in terms of, let's say, the more negative, harmful way, let's say, is being too critical. That's one way to think about it, right? Too cutting, right? Boundaries are good, you know, the structure, but if you're too cutting, then it can lead to a kind of depression, right? Sadness, like this kind of feeling, right? So you can think over criticism or even sadness or grief, okay? Everything is sinking down. It's the fall time. It's not summer anymore. You see winter, death coming, so you're kind of sad about that. Oh, I'm on the down, you know, it's over the hill, right? We say. I feel lonely, okay, about that. Despondent, okay? And then the word letting go. Is that good or bad? It's not easy, right? Letting go, right? But turning it around from harmful, actually that may be the beginning of your healing in terms of metal, right? Letting go, you know, and also, and I'm switching it now to the more yang or positive aspect of metal, I would say is forgiveness. Very powerful. There's research on this in terms of how it changes your brain states. Very powerful. From, let's say, you know, beta kind of state towards alpha, or even delta or theta level, right? And that frequency, like I said, changes our energy of our emotions. So forgiveness is super powerful medicine. One of the hardest to swallow, but super powerful. Oh, that mofo or whatever, that idiot, that jerk, right? We hold on to that. Take the medicine of forgiveness. And also related to metal, I also include gratitude, right? Say, wow, okay, I'm sad, you know, but I'm stuck like this for weeks or months, you know. Okay, maybe you can practice like, you know what? It's ending. I'm getting to the point where, okay, I can accept the closure. And you know what? I don't have to be so sad about it. Like, there was good things that I'm grateful for, you know. He was an all asshole, you know. He was at least 20% a good guy. We had some good times, right? So you can use that forgiveness and gratitude together. And then we get to the water. What is water? Water is flow, right? Water is a you know, depth, is calm waters, right? So we can think of that like peace and calm and flow. But water can also crash, right? It can also drown us, whirlpool, right? So it can also be very, very chaotic, right? We're afraid to drown, right? So the more negative or long-term harmful emotion is fear of whatever, right? That's a pretty root emotion. So I want to say a little bit more about why I don't think these are negative, right? Such as fear, such as anger, such as anxiety, such as grief. These are a way to think about it is that they're alert systems. They're emotional signals that you gotta be careful, you gotta watch out, right? And so you feel this anger, so you feel this fear, so you feel this anxiety, right? And you feel this sadness, right? The reason I give them a lot of value and credit is because they're like a sign, right? When you're driving, you see a sign. You can ignore it, right? But you might miss something very important. Oh, what? I didn't see that sign. You can see it, right? And you can say, oh, okay, good to know. Like your fear. Oh, watch out. Okay, I hear you, right? You don't have to freak out because of the fear. They're very good signposts and reference points to help us navigate. Let me go back to that model. Remember the first model I gave you of the stress capacity, input, output? Say your stress capacity is 10. When you have 5, you're good. You have space of 5. When you're reaching 8 or 9 or 10, reaching your maximum, that's when your body throws out these signals. Okay, and since we're talking about emotions now, I'll just talk about emotional signals. And I just gave you a few examples. It's telling you, watch out, be afraid, you know, or get upset, right? or try to get anxious to search around for solutions, right? Of course, they can show up as mental, or physical symptoms too, but pay attention, okay? And then with hopefully what I'm sharing you can alchemize that, okay? Maybe it is changing a behavior and just, going ahead and whatever, paying the bill, okay? Even though it's difficult, you have fear around that, just do it. So it could be as simple as that. Or you could use this kind of cultivation practices that we're getting to, or even this model that I said so far, right? So one way is to change the polarity, right? I'm pissed off, I'm angry. That's the, let's say the yin wood or the negative wood energy. One way to use this system is invoke something that you love, right? That you feel like you care about, and tap into that, right? That can flip your wood energy. It's still rising, right? But you kind of tweak it a little bit, right? So that's one way. I won't go too much into that way, but the way I want to talk about it now is that we'll get a little bit into some practices because we have about 30 minutes left, right? And again, this is a framework, a model. I have my way of presenting it to you. I hope that you find something valuable and you're inspired to use it and to make it your own, right? Because there's a lot of maybe things about your life I don't know. I'm speaking in more universal terms, right? Or exercises or practices that you can then flesh out this framework with, right? Yeah.
There's someone asked a question, Suzanne. She said, what about righteous anger?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, so that's kind of what I talked about. So again, anger is just a word, right? And we poo-poo it like, oh, you shouldn't be pissed off, right? Anger versus, let's just say, motivation, right? Or I call it generosity or altruism, right? You only have that because you care about something. You won't get angry at something you don't care about, right? So this wood energy rising is like, right? I care about something, and I'm going to get up and do something about it. So anger is, again, an activation energy. Maybe it's getting, from, let's say, motivation to anger. What's the threshold? Maybe more aggression, right? You're actually acting out. So it's getting a little bit, you're crossing a threshold from a motivation or generosity or loving kindness to actually getting a little bit aggressive or violent. Let's say from assertive to aggressive, something like that. So again, nothing wrong with anger. Sometimes we need to cross over to that aggression, especially if someone's trying to attack me, right? I taught and trained martial arts for a long time, and I teach self-defense martial arts. If all else fails, you can't run away, you can't, you gave them your wallet, but they're still coming at you, then wood energy is perfect, right? You go in and you may have to attack, right, to escape. So that's righteous anger, like go away, like stop it, leave me alone, right? And they don't listen. And you tap into that wild, that sprouting energy, that survival energy from the death of winter. You break through. That is wood energy, and that's righteous. And that's an example from martial arts. But also on the streets, yeah. Whatever your political belief on either side, you believe that it is righteous. So righteous is a little bit relative, right? What I think is righteous, another might think is wrong is whatever the opposite is, right? Whether you're left, right, conservative or progressive, whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about there is such thing as righteous anger, and it's actually good to express it, right? Hopefully it can be reconciled later on. You can find a way to reach another equilibrium. But if we don't express that when we care about something and we don't let it out, then it gets stuck in our liver, right? And can cause a whole cascade of physiological problems too. I see another question. Hopefully that answered your question. What do you treat fear with? Okay, very good. So that's where I'm getting to now. Thank you for the questions. I'm sorry if I'm going a little bit fast, but I want to transmit as much as I can to you. So earlier I said about flipping the polarity of each of these emotions, right? Anger to altruism, anxiety to awe, grief to gratitude, right? Or forgiveness. And then fear to resilience, right? Keep flowing, keep going. Or even just rest and collecting and just patience, right? Just wait. Okay, winter is now, let's hibernate, chill out, right? And then the middle, the earth is this, earth is actually related to like overthinking, over planning, which we are all guilty of, right? We can't fall asleep because of the worry. And versus trust and faith. That is an antidote, okay? So you can flip them within each of these phases, Now, Chloe, I think it was, right? Yeah, I think, yeah. Yeah, Chloe, thank you for the question. So now I'm gonna talk about, again, I talked about cycles, right? Emotional cycles. And sometimes we talk about spirals, right? Vicious spiral, downward spiral, or virtuous spiral upwards. So you can think about that too. Things that serve you or don't serve you, right? And that's very relative to the situation. So let me just, again, use the word positive and negative because it's easy to use, but without this connotation necessarily of good or bad, okay? Cycles, emotional cycles, we have positive and we have negative. And then for each of them, right, it's like a branch now, another model for you, right? Emotional cycles, positive and negative. And then each of these, positive side, negative side, also have two aspects, which, some of you are Chinese medicine practitioners, and we use the term shen and ke, right? Generation and control. But I like to play with words. So I would say the positive, there's positive generation. I'm going to use the word induction. You induce something, you feed it, okay? Positive induction and positive reduction, which is the ke, right? The cycle where you're actually, trying to reduce, right? Minimize. So positive induction, positive reduction, and then negative induction, okay? You're going along that generation cycle in a negative way, a vicious circle, and then a negative reduction, okay? So you're controlling, you're reducing the negative emotion, okay? So let me just jump straight to Chloe's question as an example of what I'm talking about. So this is an example of positive reduction. Okay, so for those Chinese medicine people, it's using the ke cycle, right? And so you can think each phase has a yin and a yang. Okay, let's say light and dark side, right? If you stay in the light, it's good. If you go too much to the dark side, like anger or fear, okay, you're going to become a Sith rather than a Jedi, right? So so we use the yang emotion to reduce the yin emotion, okay? Along the reduction cycle. What do I mean by reduction? Let's take water, fear, right? That's Chloe's question. When it's raining, suddenly, right? And there hasn't been rain for a while, right? So there's not many trees around, right? They're all dead. What happens to that flood? It doesn't just spread out, right? What happens? It flows along the channels defined by Earth, right? Like this, whatever, right? So it could be a dry riverbed that suddenly is directing the water. So Earth is what reduces or manages the flow of water. Reduces, even, I'm congratulating myself for choosing a good word. Why? What happens eventually to that flood? The Earth soaks it in, right? It reduces the water level, right? Like these crazy floods in China, right? At some point, of course, some will evaporate, but a lot of it gets soaked up and soaked down into the aquifers underneath, right? So Earth literally reduces water. So let's think about it. The yin emotion of water, that is the more dark emotion, right? Where you're getting to the negative, harmful side too long, like even paralyzed, right? The water becomes frozen, right? You don't know what to do. Or it becomes, instead of liquid water, solid, right? So like, then it's like ice blocks knocking against each other. My ice block versus your ice block, right? So there's a lot of fear when you have this us versus them. I fear you because I feel like you're threatening my worldview. So there's a lot of us versus them, right? So the strategy is to melt water. Okay, so now that's in the water. So let's focus. The yin emotion of water, the yin water emotion is fear. What is the reducing cycle or the control cycle? Some of you know it, ke cycle, is Earth reduces water, right? What is the yang emotion of Earth? Trust, right? Faith, okay? So I spoke a little bit during the little short video to promote this workshop about how I overcame that. I think the main emotion for me is fear in my life out of those that, that I mentioned. Short version of the story is like, I would just freeze when the teacher would call on me. So I would hide behind the students, the big kid, trying not to get called on. But they would, the teacher sees it. Oh, okay, Paul, what do you think about this? And I would just freeze. I would become mute. Palpitations, right? Freeze, right? Fight or flight. No, freeze for me. I didn't run away. I didn't fight. I just froze. And it wasn't until later when I was forced to, because I got good grades, right? And I became a tutor. Later on, I taught martial arts and then, Chinese medicine, etc. That I began to say, hey, you know what? Actually, I actually, for instance, let's say martial art, I talked about that a lot. It gives me such a feeling of passion and aliveness, right? You saw it a little bit earlier, right? Wow, I'm alive. And that passion, it became compassion to teach. And then with more and more teaching, with the feedback, I'm not saying I'm the greatest teacher, but the students say, oh, I like how you explain things, I got a lot of it. And I was like, really? still skeptical, right? But I developed trust as a transmitter, right? That helped overcome my fear of speaking in front of people, right? Right now online, but the last 4 years I spoke in over 20 countries, some groups almost 100, right? And MDs, so like, oh my God, right? So a lot of pressure, but that trust, right? Which takes time to develop. So it's not, again, popping a trust pill and then suddenly, right? It takes time. Anytime the fear comes up, see it as an opportunity to redose yourself with trust. Like however it is, affirmations, right? Or now the faith part, like trust and faith, right? Or just repetition, exposing yourself. First, speak in front of your beloved partner, who whatever you say, they'll love, right? Okay, and then your mom, and then your friends, right, etc. Develop trust by exposure, to your fears, right? That's a very simple way to think about it. Yeah. Because what fear would tend to do is actually freeze you, right? And you don't even want to go outside of the box. You don't even want to take action, right? Another way to do it is actually the fear go into wood. Water goes into wood, flow in that direction, right? And that's also related to what I just shared. Like I became really excited to share things with people, my generosity, my loving kindness for the students. And so some of that water fear turned into that motivation or that loving kindness, that generosity to share. And then it became fire as my passion, my awe, like, wow, what I shared was actually pretty good. Like they actually got something out of it. Thank you. Thank you is then the metal part, right? Thanks for being here, right? Thank you, for this opportunity. That's the metal part, right? So that's one way you can do it. That's actually what I just laid out is the positive induction cycle, right? Water becomes wood, becomes fire, becomes metal, becomes water. Okay, and for now I'm leaving just earth in the middle. So it's a little bit simplified. So I just did a summary of the positive induction cycle, which relates to Chloe's question. One way is try to find those things you really care about, right? That's wood. And then like for me, I really cared about people learning self-defense because I had, a partner or friends who were attacked, right? And I'm like, wow, I wasn't there to help them. So let me just teach the masses, how to defend themselves, something I cared about, right? And so that helped drain some of the fear, right? Often fear is like stuck where we're just thinking about how we look, how we sound, right? So another trick I use is like, forget you, Paul, like however you look or sound, the key thing is like what comes through you, right? So I try to get out of my own way, focus on the student, focus on the listener, right? Doing my best to try to use useful communication, but it's not about me, right? Even if they say, oh, wow, you're a great master. I say, okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Please practice, that makes me happy, right? People will project whatever on you, right? But don't project it on yourself, all this pressure and expectations. We're all the same, actually, pretty much, right? More or less experience in different matters, right? For instance, I have the honor to learn calligraphy from my calligraphy teacher, and he's learning some cultivation from me, right? So we're high and low in different ways. So another thing about trust and faith, right? You can go to your faith tradition, whatever it is, Sufism or Taoism or Buddhism or Orthodox Christianity or Shinto or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be a formal thing. It could be your own thing. Go into that. Invest time, energy in faith as much you do in fear, right? And that can be a medicine, an antidote. Again, you can see there's multiple medicines we can take per, let's say, pathological emotion. Let's call it that, right? But this is in response to Chloe. Yeah, we're getting close on time actually. So I don't think I have time to go through every single example. Maybe I can give you one more. Maybe in regards to anger. Okay, that one's very very common too. So anger is the yin emotion of wood, right? What is the phase that reduces or checks wood? Okay, metal, right? Chop down wood, right? Cut it into pieces, break it down. So what was the positive, the yang emotion of metal, right? Little pop quiz, anyone? Gratitude and forgiveness, okay? And again, this is not easy, okay? Like playing the violin at first, I don't even know where to put the thing on my neck, so it takes me years, okay, before I become deficient, what is like deficiency to familiarity to proficiency to mastery, right? And I don't claim to be a master, right? But we can all develop a greater virtuosity of our emotional awareness and intelligence. And so in terms of anger now, right? We've talked about that as, right? But too long, you're gonna have a heart attack, right? Or you're gonna hurt yourself, right? So simple example, road rage, right? I don't know if you guys drive, but I'm driving, someone cuts me off and can't believe you did that, almost killed us, or killed me, right? Right. And you talk about the story, to your friends that afternoon, next week, next month, next year, 10 years later, you're still like, that idiot, right? You didn't let your emotion expire. Remember we talked about that? There's a birth, a maximum, and then a decline and a death of everything, including emotions. But we kept resurrecting it, right? And so what we can invoke, and it takes practice, it may take you 6 months or a year before you feel a difference, depending on how intentionally you practice and how frequent, is what's the yang emotion of metal that can cut the yin emotion of wood? We said gratitude and forgiveness, right? So, and I would say there's one overarching thing that we can say that is always useful. That is creative humor, okay? So that always works in everything, right? Be creative, okay? Tap into your human creativity. We still have that over artificial intelligence for now, right? AI. And humor, wow, right? You can change the energy of the whole situation. So maybe I think, okay, how can I make this a funny story? Yeah, okay, this guy cut me off, suddenly almost hit me and killed me. But maybe he had food poisoning and he has diarrhea, right? And all he can think of is bathroom, bathroom, bathroom. He didn't even see me, right? He has tunnel vision for toilet. And that's why he almost cut me off. Yeah, that's okay. Okay, maybe that's what happened. I don't know, but I'm just being creative about it, right? Like creative storytelling, short story. And and it's kind of funny, right? Bowel movements are funny, right? So then I'm like, okay, all right. I don't take it personally, right? Because wood is kind of ego, right? Too, like holding on, controlling, right? You lost control, right? So the anger arose. And then forgiveness. All right, okay. Since he didn't mean it, I can let it go finally after 5 years, right? If you're more skillful, have more agility and creativity, maybe you can get over that within 90 seconds. Whoa. And then check yourself, right? Say, okay, at least I'm still alive, gratitude. And that wasn't on purpose, like you just had to go poo, right? So, right? You have to be creative like that, okay? So that is metal on wood, okay? So those are 2 examples. There's more, but I think I have to transition a little bit now. So there's those 4 I talked about. Emotional cycles. You can say vicious cycle and virtuous cycle. Upward spiral, downward spiral. Cycles. You have negative and positive, right? And each of those have induction and reduction. Positive induction, positive reduction, negative induction, negative reduction. What was positive induction? We just went through it. I'd serve someone with my generosity and care, loving kindness, and I'm wowed. I'm so, wow and awe and joy and happiness for the results of what happened. And then gratitude. Wow, thanks. Like I'm so grateful for this opportunity. And then finally, water? Peace. Right? So that's the positive induction, which you can train, okay? Negative induction, let's not talk about that too much, but anger, anxiety, depression, and fear can feed into each other as a vicious cycle, negative induction. Let's talk about positive reduction, which we just did, right? Using the positive emotion of earth, trust, to reduce the negative emotion of water, fear. Using the positive emotion of metal, forgiveness and gratitude, to reduce the negative emotion of wood, which is anger. Okay, so I mentioned breath earlier. So let's do a little exercise, right? Because breath is one of the most amazing tools. We take it for granted, and but also a lot of traditions do not take it for granted. They actually use it as one of the key tools, right? Earlier, I said that I said meaning is a currency, but meaning is related to what you care about, right? And care is an emotion, right? So meaning and emotion is the currency, right? Again, more valuable, I think, than paper money between the mind and the body, right? So I want to, and then also it's related to the breath. I forgot to mention that, right? So emotions, breath, and energy, you can't tease them apart. So that's why I'm going to go into the breath now. We talked about emotions. We talked a little bit about energy in different directions. What about breath now? We talked about breath can start the inspiration, wood. Maximum inhalation, hold it, that's fire. Expiration, right? Letting things go, right? That's metal. We talked about fall, right? And then when you stop breathing, you die, right? Rest in peace, right? Of course, we can resurrect ourselves, rebirth, and then that cycle continues. So let's do that. And I think I have time to say, I mentioned already one of them, the liver, okay, is related to rising energy, wood energy, okay, and anger, okay, and then fire related to the heart, right? That makes sense, right? What about metal? Metal is related to the lungs, grief, right? Like that. And then you have fear related to the kidneys, obviously. Even in Western medicine, you have the adrenal glands, which release adrenaline and cortisol, the stress hormones. So, and then we have earth related to the pancreas, spleen, kind of the digestive system, right? So let's just do this, okay? And liver is on the right side, you know, where the heart is, slightly on the left, kidneys on the back, spleen slightly on the left here, right? So let's just do this together. And very simple. Let's use our hands, right? And just contact superficially here, not inside, right? Our organs. So put your hands on your liver here, right? And I want you just for now to breathe in anger, right? This is why martial arts are so useful. You get to feel anger productively and do something about it. But now just, right? Even make a sound on the exhale. I know it's kind of weird, kind of silly, but make a face, right? Right? This is actually the negative induction, right? Get a little bit angry, feel that rising energy. I'm gonna, you know, do something about it. I'm gonna go march, I'm gonna go protest, I'm gonna go fight. Okay, let's not spend too much time there. Let's go into fire. Wow, anxiety, right? That anger, I tried, but it doesn't seem like it's working, so I'm getting anxious about it. Oh my God, yeah, you're looking around. Feel that in your heart, right? Don't create a heart attack, but just feel that, right? That's negative induction. We do this automatically, but I want you to do it consciously. And then, right, that anxiety, that fire, let's bring it down actually to the earth, which is kind of worry and insecurity. Well, it goes into your gut. Some people have digestive issues because of that. Oh my God, you know, this worry thing. Feel that, right? Insecurity feeling, right? And then let's go into our lungs, right? I don't see what can be done, you know? So you kind of give up. And in your lungs, you feel this sadness and grief of having to let go and give up, right? This is the situation. Oh my God, yeah. And then you go into your kidneys and this fear, like, I'm afraid that nothing is ever going to change, right? I'm frozen, right? I'm just going to be stuck here. Fear. So that's a negative induction cycle. Let's flip it. Let's go into the positive induction cycle. Let's go back to the liver and let's feel that rising energy. What rises up? A feeling of generosity and loving kindness, especially with the in-breath. And then exhale, just kind of feel it, let it seep in. In-breath, loving kindness, generosity, altruism, feel it in your liver. Say hello, okay? That's where the energy of this comes from, the wood energy. Once again, loving kindness. And then exhale that into your heart and then be like, wow, right? Joy, expansion, wow. You see a beautiful mountain view or Grand Canyon or waterfall. You see a child being born. Wow. Give yourself that medicine. Yeah, good. Then exhale that into your spleen, your digestive tract, pancreas, right? As faith, as trust, right? Everything is going to be okay. Go back to your center. Fire becomes earth. Trust, breathe in, trust. Yeah, trust your gut instinct. Trust myself. I trust other people. That's hard nowadays, right? Breathe it in. And then exhale, the earth goes to the metal. Breathe in, forgiveness and gratitude. Maybe one in each lung, right? Forgiveness in one, gratitude, yeah. And exhale, just feel it. Again, gratitude. Good, exhale. And you can think of specific things, right? Gratitude, even for this breath. Despite all that's going on, right? We have this time together. Good, breathe in one more time. Exhale that gratitude into your kidneys. Feel it in your kidneys as peace, calm, depth, patience, resilience. Breathe into that a few times. So it's also dissolving your fear, right? We all have the capacity to tune ourselves, but we get stuck, right? And this is fear, and try to breathe deep into the depths where the waves don't affect us. Breathe in, resilience, peace, rest in peace. Hold your breath out for a second. Good. Spend a little bit more time on fear. Okay, so that's a negative induction, right? Which is good to like flush out that, that's why I say, I'm not promoting martial arts per se, but I think everyone should try it, right? Because you simulate unsafe situation. Well, that guy's going to attack you, right? And ooh, I feel afraid. But instead of freezing and getting hit, you actually learn to do something, right? So that's another way, besides meditation, besides prayer, besides psychotherapy, even psychedelic medicine, fasting, or going out in the sun, or grounding, right? There's a lot of ways that we can kind of put onto this model that I'm giving you. So negative induction, right? Positive induction, and then there's also positive reduction of the negative, okay? Positive induction of the positive, negative induction of the negative, positive reduction of the negative, and then there's also negative reduction of the positive. We won't do, but in the last couple minutes here, let's do similar exercise, but we're going to program it, right? We're going to input a different intention. We're going to use a cycle, and I'll lead you through it. Let's start with metal. Yeah. Let's start with metal. Reducing anger. I talked about that earlier, right? So we can use forgiveness, which I said, according to a couple research that I saw, is one of the most powerful positive psychological medicine. So let's go back into our into our lungs. Train ourselves, right? You feel nothing at first, like I'm grateful for nothing, right? But try to be creative. Grateful for gravity, grateful for this body, grateful for your ears to hear, right? If you like what you hear, breathe in that into your lungs. Fill your lungs with that gratitude pressure. What are we going to do with that? On the next inhale, breathe in, gratitude, fill it up. We're going to exhale and drive that positive metal energy into the liver, anger, right? We're going to reduce the anger. And you can do that again. Breathe in lung, gratitude. And you can have a specific image if you like, right? And then help to use that to dissolve the anger. Again, inhale gratitude or even forgiveness, right? And then exhale that into the liver. Anger dissolves. Now anger becomes loving kindness, right? Generosity, breathe that in. That's the wood. Again, breathe it in, charge it up. Generosity, loving kindness, helping others. And then a motivation, right? And then exhale that into the earth. Wood controls earth, which is what? Your worries, right? Your over planning, overthinking, right? And wood is taking action, right? Breathe in. And motivation, energy, drive it into the overthinking. Good. One more time. Motivation, generosity, exhale. And breathe it, exhale it into the earth, negative emotion. Trust and faith. Earth, positive, charge it up. Trust and faith in the center. In whatever you can invoke. And then water goes into the kidney, fear. Trust helps to dissolve the fear. Again, breathe in the trust, faith. Exhale into the fear. One more time, trust everything's going to be okay. Exhale that into your kidneys. Let the fear go from ice to water flow. Breathe into your kidneys. That resilience, that patience, that calm. Charge it up. Resilience, patience, and calm. That depth of wisdom. Good. Breathe it in one more time. And exhale it into the fire of the heart, the anxiety. One more time, breathe in the peace and calm of the kidneys. And exhale to help put out the fire of anxiety, agitation, palpitation, especially in the exhale. One more time, breathe in the water, peace, and exhale into the heart, anxiety. I think we have one more, right? Breathe in the wow, the joy, amazing, into your heart. Again, amaze yourself, wonder like a child. Exhale. One more time, charge your heart with awe. Take in the medicine, and then use that awe to treat your sadness, grief, depression of your lungs. Again, awe in the heart, fire. Wow, 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 wow. Aliveness. Use that to enliven the depression, the sadness. Turn it around. Let go. There can be a new start, right? Don't be too sad now. Awe. And then into the sadness dissolves. And one more time, we breathe into the lungs. We flip it from grief to gratitude again. A few times. Breathe in. Gratitude into our lungs. And one more time, gratitude. Let's do a little closing. So I have a little gesture, right? I stole it from yoga, but a lot of cultures do it, palms together, right? You inspire, right? You inspire when you do this. What do we do when we inspire? Loving kindness, right? Rising. When we do this action, right? It's a greeting, also a closing. So next time if we meet, we can do the same greeting. Inspire, right? Loving kindness, right? And then hold it in for a moment. Hold your breath in. Wow. Awe. And then start to exhale. And when you exhale, hug yourself. Like this. Forgiveness. Gratitude. And then what? Hold your breath out. What is that? Rest in peace. Let's do it one more time just for fun. Inspire, loving kindness, wood, energy rising positively. Hold it in. Wow, I'm alive, right? Start to expire. Forgiveness, gratitude. Thank you so much, right? And hold it out. Peace. Everything stops. One last time. Inspire. Loving kindness. I love me so much. I hold it in. Wow, I'm alive. Expire. Forgiveness and gratitude. Hug yourself. I love me for being here. Thank me for coming. And then hold your breath out and rest in peace for a couple of seconds. Let it die. Expire. Okay, rebirth, resurrect yourself. And here we are. Welcome back. Okay, I think that's all we have time for today. So if you have any questions, you can chime in, or you can let me hear your voice for a second. Otherwise, I'll just close it out by saying that, yeah, there's a lot of shit going on, right? In many ways, there's the obvious ways that are publicized, but a lot of ways that are kind of, you have to look into, and which can create a lot of grief, right? The smoke outside is filling my lungs, making me sad, right? And so I spoke about operating system, culture, and we can talk about humanity, right? And which is composed of individual humans, which have this powerful aspect to them, which is emotion, right? So we're not going to improve the average of the grade, right, of humanity. I think we're like pretty low right now. I wouldn't say failing, but A, B, C, D, maybe a C or D, right? But I'm also very, very hopeful. But it takes each one of us, right, in our own way. And if something I shared with you was informative and inspirational, then please make it your own, right? That would be my hope, because I don't know how much time we have left. Some say some years, some say we have longer, but in any case, right? This moment of whether we're on the inspiration or expiration phase of breath, right? These kind of frames of time space is actually what we have. So thank you for your attention and your presence and your investment in yourself. One last thing I'll say in terms of investment is, like, some people ask, like, how much should I train, right? It's on you, but I like to say you are worth at least 14.4 minutes a day. What the hell? What's that? Well, we have 60 minutes every hour. We have 24 hours. That's 1,440 minutes. And 14.4 is 1% of your day for your self-care cultivation. Not healthcare, not sick care. It's something you only do for yourself and you. That is the primary relationship, the quality of which affects all secondary and tertiary relationships beyond until we reach humanity and earthling level, not just Homo sapiens. So one little math thing at the end, I did a little calculation. If you start with 1, right, and you know power, like 1 squared, right, is 1. 1 to the 3rd power is 1. 1 to the 4th power is 1, right? You know that. What's 1 to 365? That is 365 days, right? If you don't invest, if you invest 0, 1, okay, and plus 0, right, to 365 is still 1, right? So you don't get any return on your investment. Actually, you're not investing. How about this? You invest 1%, like I said. What is that? 1.01, right? 1.01, that's 1%. 0.01 times 100 is 1%, okay? Do the calculation. 1.01, I did it for you, or if you have a calculator, you can check me. 1.01 to the 365th, what is it? It actually comes out to 37.78. Hope this is not too nerdy for you guys, but what is 37.78 in terms of percentage? You times 100, 3,778% return on investment. Like what kind of investment do you get? The banks give you like 1%, right? In a year, right? So when I say 1%, 14.4 minutes, don't think that's nothing, okay? Because that 1% will start to bleed out in the remaining 99%, right? And I think I even did a calculation. If you invest 1.01, but that's too much. But even if you invest even 2 minutes a day, or 1.4 minutes, actually, you still have a return on investment at the end of the year about 47%. So again, hopefully that's not too abstract for you, but the point is that a little bit of investment in your self-care cultivation. And today our main thing was about emotion. And I ran through some things. So if you have some questions, you can contact Nadia or me via email or something like that. We'll find another way to get together. But I guess there may be a recording of this, I think.
Yeah. So the workshop will be recorded, and I will send out the recording to all of you who registered for the workshop, as well as a few notes that I was taking in case you missed out on anything. I'll be sending all of that to you out by tomorrow. And if you have any questions, you can email me at nadia@zayamed.com. Otherwise, you'll receive my email tomorrow. So, yeah.
Okay.
I think that's it, right?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your silent presence, your digital attention, and hopefully you find something valuable to use. And yeah, feel free to, if you have questions or you have feedback, I'll be happy to eventually hear from you. So we're gonna sign off. Take care until next time. Yeah.
Thank you so much,
bye.
Everyone.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Okay. Bye-bye. Oh, people are still. Oh yeah. Thank you, guys. They're chiming in. Literally, I hear a chime.
Thank you, Paul.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you, Marie. Good to see you.
Take care.
Yeah, you too. You too. 不客气, Heather, 不客气. You wrote in Chinese there, huh? You're welcome, Heather. Thank you for being in the workshop.
Hi, Paul. Thank you.
Oh, who is that?
I'm Sylvia.
Ah, Sylvia, good to see you. Yeah, something was blocking the screen. Good to see you. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for you.
Yeah. Yeah.